It is another edition of the Landscape and Garden Show with Bob Harvey and BT Brian Turner here on the Alive and Social Network. I don't know, as we get the show started here, I don't know, sitting opposite me at the table here, if I'm going to start getting kicked in the shins by one Bob Harvey because I planted some song earworms in his head before we got the show started. We're doing our prep work. We're singing out loud. We both like to sing. Mm-hmm. And I started riffing into, well, frankly, some Paul Anka that got a little weird. And then a couple of other tunes. And now I think I might go into the Bill Withers Grover Washington one, because here we are, just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Landscape and gardening, you and I. Remember? Did you see any of those Austin Powers movies? Did you see any of those there?
I'm sure I did.
When they riffed on that song, you know, with Dr. Evil, Dr. Evil, just the two of us. $1 billion. Good to see you, Bob. How you feeling today, buddy?
I'm feeling great. I think it's a time, obviously, of a lot of mental and physical exertion
in your line of work. Exactly.
Well,
this is go time,
plus,
man.
You know, they're with the great weather and the time of the year. They're just in general in people. You find this sense of urgency about. Wow, I want to get to this. I want to get to that. Whatever category it is, it could be recreational. It could be work related. It could be. Family traditions, i.e. all the grad parties. I mean, there's so many things going on, and it's like the polar opposite weather experience-wise and tradition-wise of the month of December. Okay, so you're doing all the.
Well, I don't know if it's polar. There's a lot of traditions in
Polar
December.
opposite.
I got you now. There's a lot of traditions there, but I see what you're saying now. Gotcha.
Yeah, so that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, rituals and traditions.
Yeah.
And so with each season comes this. There's in some ways, expectations as well as opportunities for ritual expressions and things that are anticipated or are finally realized, whether they're in human activities and celebrations and things like that, or in the landscape.
Yeah.
Because in the landscape, it kind of creates its own sense of ritual, because we, at least in my line of work, I align so many things about how I operate and when to do certain things based on what's happening with the landscape and the weather and the time of the year, the season. And it's something you just get excited about. There's a lot of anticipation at this time of the year, and it just keeps going and going and going until well after Labor Day.
And then certainly the anticipations and the rituals that come from having an established garden. Mm-hmm. And so you're used to the pace of the plants that you have there. Mm-hmm. And so you just wait for those certain lilies to start springing up. I mean, the tulips are already gone, but you've waited the winter for those and the early bloomers to come up, and now they're gone. And now you've got a whole series of other plants. Your Japanese lilac that you love, that tree in your backyard, now it's just going full tilt boogie, but it wasn't, a couple, 3 weeks ago, and now it's there. And just all those rituals and all of those timelines that come from those lovely plants that you nurture and grow and keep an eye on and sometimes move. And then maybe there's also the heritage aspect of it, that plant that you inherited from your grandma, and you always wait every year because you found a special spot for it in your garden. And there's a ritual. And then when that blooms, all of the ritualistic memories that come alongside that. You think of your mom or grandma or whomever it came from, all that kind of stuff.
Like one of the ones we talked on one of the previous podcasts was the idea, and we include these elements when we're creating design and getting into the different layers of design, talking about the rituals that the client may have. Things, my mother had this, my grandmother had this, or when I was a child we did this, or I have certain favorite things, and how we incorporate that into the design so that the expectation is realized when those things actually start to happen. They're like, wow, I haven't experienced this since I was a child.
Yeah.
Or you made this very meaningful. So it becomes very relational. And the example I thought of was the whole Memorial Day time. And people think about peonies blooming around Memorial Day. And what will we be thinking about when 4th of July weekend comes? What I think about explosive color, explosive activity, things going on, annuals maturing, perennials in full bloom, lots of activity in the garden in terms of the bees and the butterflies and the night things that are going on at night as well, the sounds and all those kinds. So there's a crescendo, if you will, of things that happen around midsummer. And you'll notice a lot of your tours will begin in the month of July.
Oh, absolutely.
This year, probably a little bit earlier, things will be moving.
Because we're a little ahead of the curve.
A little ahead of the curve, but it also means that people plan for that. And so the month of July is going to be fabulous for gardens and landscapes to really be just expressing themselves. And the weather and the patterns have been absolutely ideal.
Yeah, this July timeframe I had. For many years after we built our landscape in the backyards, we built it in 2002. And by the way, we can tell some stories about that along the way here too, because it was one of those extremely rainy years. I mean, the delays that my landscape crew had to endure, and the mud, everywhere in our backyard for some stretches there. It was nothing untenable because we knew what the goal was and we were happy with that. But oh my goodness, the tarps that were stretched, for a few days here and there, and just these things happen. Mm-hmm. But once we got that thing rocking and everything was done, the very next year we were on the Parade of Ponds tour that the Minnesota Water Garden Association still does, I believe. They still do that. And I think it's not as large as it was before, but that was always a real treat. We did that, I think, for 4 or 5 years running. And that was always in July because you could just, expect that the conditioning of your water, the fish that you've introduced back into the pond. In our case, we had fish in the pond, the koi fish and everything, and all the water garden plants, the hibiscus floating on the water, and all the
water lilies,
water
hyacinths.
And so those would be going at it and splitting and dividing, and I'd put those in big hoops, and just have those all, gathered together. And then, of course, the explosion of the green and the colors from the flowers and everything else, always right there in July. It was just a perfect time to be able to show off that stuff and share it with other people. Absolutely. That was a ritual then, too. And now we have that same ritual. We just try to rotate some parties around it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Woohoo! Mm-hmm. We just try to ritualize it that way now.
Exactly. I want to talk a little bit about a few rituals that I have that have been very meaningful for my profession. But before I do, I think we should talk about what's blooming.
Oh, God, please.
Do you have anything blooming in your yard?
I've got tons of stuff blooming in my yard. All sorts. I've got some hosta stems coming up already. I mean, that kind of surprised me. Again, we're talking about being ahead of the curve here. That was a little bit of a surprise. I got obviously tons of lilies everywhere. I've got
what kind of lilies? Just the day lilies, bulb lilies,
complete cross section.
Yep.
All across the board. Bearded irises are still coming up.
Yes.
Some of them have come and gone, but I've still got some of those going at it. I'm at a loss. The peonies I still have some peonies that are going, but a lot of those guys are starting to droop and wilt. But I tell you what I did, because I love to do this. It's one of my favorite cut flowers. Bring those rascals in the house and get some of that smell and some of that color in the house. I just love bringing the peonies in the house. Mm-hmm. I've got a new neighbor next door, and a brand new house for him. 24-year-old kid. I'm really proud of him. And I've told him as much. I just met him, but I'm telling you, listen, Bryce, I'm proud of you, because at 24 years of age, I was nowhere near.
You're owning a home and taking care of a landscape, and yeah.
But he got, I know it's just been a busy week for him, but I've got a weed whacker. He doesn't. Again, new house. He's got a lawnmower, but no weed whacker. I said, listen, I'll be out whacking the weeds. This mm-hmm. ring that you've got around this tree here in your front yard with the peonies in it, I'll whack I'll just, take me 2 more minutes. Be glad mm-hmm. to help you out. It'll look nice.
Yeah.
And I'm out there anyhow.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, that'd be great, man. Thanks. And he and his girlfriend were out there, and I tried to do my best to encourage them, because it's right when those peonies were just going. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were just exploding. And I said, just grab a good sharp scissors, and I'll bring them in and trim them and get them in the water and get a little plant food in there or some sugar, just something mm-hmm. to give them a little extra boost. Mm-hmm. And you guys, it'll just be great. Puts them in the kitchen, puts them in the living room. They never got around to it. Yeah, they're all drooping out there. But maybe I planted a garden seed, so to speak, for next year, and they'll get out there and cut some of those and get to it. I just know it's been a busy week for him. So.
Well, yeah, just in the peony category alone, we've had that big flush of peonies, and if you're really vigilant with the debudding and stuff as these the past ones, deadheading and so forth, you can really extend their bloom season. And particularly what what's taking them so fast now is the intenseness of the sun, the intensity of
Yeah.
the sun right now. So temperature-wise, we may be hovering in the 70s. We've had some showers. There's moisture in the ground. That sun comes out and blasts those. They're delicate. The petals are just, they're like
Very much
silk,
so,
and they're
yeah.
very, very delicate. So the heat, withers them very, very quickly. And they're more of a cool weather crop in terms of their optimal performance. So go out there now with some of those remaining buds. My suggestion would be, if there's still some buds that are just showing color, getting ready to open, I'd cut those and get them inside because
Okay.
they'll last a lot longer and keep them out of the sun and in the air conditioning.
What's the best technique for deadheading those blossoms that are already gone? Just right where the blossom head is, or come down
No,
the
I
stem a
go
little
down.
bit?
I
or-
go down until I get the next full set of leaves, and then I just treat it like a shrub. So, how does it look? I don't want it to look so tight that shrub-wise that you can bounce a quarter off of
Right.
it. I like the idea that it has some of a natural, graceful look, but you can't see where the cuts are, and that's our specialty. Is that we can. By the time
Hide
we've
the
done our
cut.
grooming, that you can't even tell.
Sure.
You know
Cool.
it's different,
Yeah.
but you don't know how and why. So.
Now, are those sort of like, boomers? And by that I mean you get that big chunk of blossoms and they all start blooming. You deadhead those, like you're saying, then they're done. They only got one round of blossoming. I mean,
For the most part, some of them will push the more recessive buds if you're vigilant about deadheading it.
deadheading,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And some of them kind of abort. They don't really open up fully
just gotta
this
wait
year,
for
but they
next
will
year?
next year.
Yeah, then you just got to wait for next
They're
year.
building up those root systems.
Mhm,
So,
that's cool, then.
and the more foliage there, obviously the more they can feed the
With the
tubers.
photosynthesis.
Yeah,
Now,
right.
hey, speaking of that, because we want them to bloom maybe better next year, is there any special fertilizing that you can do, whether it's the peonies, whether it's the irises, whether it's others, sort of they've hit their peak, they've done their thing, you've left some stems there for the photosynthesis to get the energy into that root system. Can you do a little something with, are there special fertilizers or any kind of fertilizers just to kind of help
I
it
like-
along to
I
make it
like-
even better next year?
I think we like to keep it simple, stupid.
Okay.
The old kind of approach is, and we did this back early in the spring, is basically composting.
Doing it then.
Putting the compost down and letting that natural decomposition and nutritive, with a lot of microorganisms in the compost, and those are the things that plants like that are not big feeders, but they benefit tremendously from that.
Because
The
it
soil
leaches so slowly into that soil and gently
Right.
into the soil.
Also, the other thing is it has a little bit of a natural repellent to it, particularly for deer, is Milorganite. Milorganite's a product that, it's a byproduct of a lot of human and other types of waste that it's harmless. It's a low concentration, so you're not burning up. We use it on lawns, you
Okay.
use it in garden beds, and it really provides a good nutrition source. And so those things generally, and when you're thinking about things that maybe are bigger feeders, i.e. roses and bulbs and things like that, if you want to bloom again next year for the bulbs, is you want to feed them while they're blooming and then leave the foliage alone, let things die back. The bulbs of tulips, the bulbs of alliums, those kinds of things, where they're storing up big time for next year because they're heavy bloomers. But among the things right now that are blooming that are one of my favorites is, and it's very underutilized, is the mock orange. The old-fashioned mock orange. A lot of
Yeah.
people remember the golden mock oranges. They get kind of rangy after a while, and they have kind of light green leaves and, the white flowers. But they've come up with some fabulous cultivars.
Funny you
of
bring that up because I haven't seen one in a while. I just haven't seen
Well,
one.
I'm going
in
to tell you a
some
little
time.
later where I was, where there were plenty of them blooming, and
Cool.
we just planted them last year, and the scent was unbelievable.
Oh,
You think
yeah,
about
I
the
love
scent
that
of the
plant.
peonies and the scent of the lilacs, the lilac trees, and you're going, wow, I didn't realize that these would have so much potential scent to
I
them.
remember them, especially the scent at night. How it just wafts through that
Right.
cooler air at
Right.
night more so than the
Right.
day. You smell it in the day,
Right.
but especially at night.
Right. And, with plants that we tend not to think of when we're doing our designs and putting things in, whether it's shrubs or perennials or annuals, we don't think a lot about white in terms of the there's somebody rushing off to the garden center, isn't there?
They're getting a mock orange. I can tell right.
Boy, that was quick.
Wow, they're
Wow.
listening to the live stream. Let alone the
There they
podcast.
go.
Oh. Hey, where's the fire? Don't get to say that so often.
But with the mock oranges, what they've done is they've come out with some fabulous cultivars where the flowers are bigger. They haven't lost any of their fragrance.
That's cool.
And it smells like orange blossoms.
Yeah.
They're just fabulous. And there's the Snowbell series and the Snowflake series and very handsome shrubs. And you said in the evening when the scent is going, well, if you know these plants are going to be very fragrant in the evening, you want to be able to see them. So
Sure.
white shows up.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And, of course, becomes a backdrop because it's a shrub for other things in the front that can be of other colors. So
Yeah.
you get those contrasts. So we're always looking at color, texture, size, and appropriate location, given soil conditions and light and things like that. And all those components coming together, art and science, give you the successful designs that we have been able to experience in our business at Edelweiss Design.
Sure.
So, mock orange. I think that's one people ought to.
I got it on my list. I'm making a little
take,
list here.
A little more, and in the garden center. So right now they're still kind of blooming, and you'll see some examples of that. They're very manageable plants.
How big do they get? I mean,
It depends on the variety. Some are 2 feet. Some get up to 5 to 7.
Okay, yeah. There's some of those new cultivars. They've got
Right.
all ranges of sizes.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And then catalpa trees are in bloom right now.
There's
I
one
call
on my
them
block.
the orchid trees. They look like
they
big
are-
panicles of white orchids, and
And
they have
those
a fragrance, but
yeah, they
it's
do.
pretty high up there. But you can still smell them.
And those leaves on that tree are so gigantic too. They're like dinner plates.
Oh, I know. You know what I like about that is they add an element of tropics to our
Yeah, they do.
landscape. And again, it's that texture thing and scale. I work closely, and over the years, worked closely with our park board here in Minneapolis, and they allowed us to go around and tour the Linden Hills neighborhood and make suggestions because of our background and professional contribution as well as involvement in the neighborhood about what if we could do this? What if we could do that? Here's some places for some opportunity for some real high profile showing trees and, all this different kind of thing, and get away from monocultures and, 4 blocks of green ash or 4 blocks of Kentucky or not honey locust or,
Sure.
that kind of thing. And,
or lindens or
yes,
whatever the case
and we
may
have a
be.
lot of those
Yes,
in
you
Linden
do.
Hills,
Yes,
which
you
are
do.
getting ready to bloom too, and that's a
Yeah.
wonderful fragrance. But no monoculture is healthy. So we always want to look about that insurance policy, that insurance plan in our designs that say, what if this, what if that, and how these plants complement each other through their growth cycle. And to accommodate for change. So if the landscape should change, we have more hardscape, we widen the sidewalks or whatever it is,
Sure.
how will these things respond to those kinds of things? So catalpa trees are one of those that won't disappoint you. The pods and stuff in the fall and the early spring, you deal with them.
Yeah, you got a little bit of a mess
Yeah.
there, but that's not a bad deal.
You
There's-
can do penny a pod.
Yeah,
and
penny
pay
a-
your
get the
kids to
kids?
pick up. Yep.
One thing I'll say about the catalpa pods is that with that lighter rake, you got the bigger
Yeah.
plastic rake. They actually just let them dry out. They're actually very easy to just to gather together. And they click, click when you're but they're easy to just
Yeah.
to get at. And then the ones that you miss with the rake, they're so
Yeah.
big and dried out, desiccated. They're easy to pick up too. A penny a pod.
A penny a pod.
Penny a pod.
And when we were kids and stuff, that was our cigars. They called it the cigar tree. We were pretending those were our cigars.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm
I'm Edward G. Robinson.
So we talked
It's
about
a different era now, isn't
it.
it?
Oh, it is indeed.
Yes.
So we're talking about irises in the past too, because we have early, mid, and late blooming, and then we have all the different categories of iris. We have the bearded iris. We have variegated forms in the bearded iris family, Japanese iris, Siberian iris. But one that I'm going to mention, if you have a water feature in your
Yep.
yard, we get some of those areas around our ponds and water features where there's a lot of moisture, whether it's spray,
Yep.
the soil tends to stay a little wetter, or we have a natural pond situation. If you have some decent sun, this is one plant that I think is very, very underutilized, and it's hard to find in a lot of cases, but it's the Iris ensata, E-N-S-A-T-A. And the Iris ensata likes to sit in pretty high moisture soil, and not necessarily water, but it will tolerate being submerged. And it's just starting to bloom right now. It's a deep violet purple flower, purple flower, but the leaves are variegated. And unlike the other irises where they're, kind of wider, thicker leaves, these leaves tend to be very narrow and sword-like. They're really long and tall, almost like a grass.
Cool.
Like your Siberian iris,
Yeah.
that looks like kind of like a grass. But when you get a colony of these going, they're absolutely the classiest looking thing next to water, and they won't disappoint you.
So just a nice little cluster of those next to the pond.
Yes,
I'm liking
so
that.
they're variegated leaves. They have the deep, deep purpley red violet flowers that contrast against the variegation. And long after the bloom is gone, instead of just having plain green foliage, you have reliably this beautiful variegated foliage.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yes.
And with the slenderness, too, not something
very
fat and
elegant.
thick.
Very
Yeah,
elegant.
right.
Like pelican legs or something like that. All.
Yeah, next to the pond. That
Next
would be
to the
great.
pond, exactly.
Or any kind of moist area.
Yeah.
Mhm. Maybe next to your rain garden, too.
Yeah.
Or the, as you have a rain garden on your curbside
They're
or something
wonderful
like
for rain gardens. Absolutely. So when you're thinking about irises that tolerate water,
that. Yeah, and like you said, being submerged occasionally.
being submerged, these would serve well. They don't like to dry out like for extended period of time, or they will atrophy.
Okay.
So the next thing is the Dianthus family or the Carnation family. White sport coat and a pink carnation.
You're getting back at me now, aren't you? New earworm. You're getting back at me with the earworms. I can tell. But that's fine. I like that song.
You know what? These are fun plants because there's such a wide diversity selection of them. Tall, short, in between.
It's a plant that a lot of folks tend not to think of putting in their garden, too.
Well, it depends on the application because some people look at them and go, oh, they're just too old grandma for me.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And the most old-fashioned ones that I like to use in rock garden settings is what they call the Sweet Williams. Do you ever remember that name, Sweet William?
And I know exactly the plant you're talking
and
about.
they're kind of short and tufty, and they grow like a little mound. And good drainage, lots of sun. They'll come back every year, and that nice spicy scent is awesome.
That's a very popular one, that Sweet William one.
It
Yep.
is. And then the other varieties that I tend to like, just the real clean single flowering ones. So the Deltoides is one that hangs over rocks in rock gardens. It's a real bright red pink, thready kind of foliage, and hangs down 1 foot or more over rocks and so forth, out of crevices and that kind of thing. And then there's one called, and it's usually sold as an annual, it's called Amazon Neon.
Okay.
And in some cases, it comes back pretty strong. And it gets about 2 feet tall, magenta purple to a hot pink, goes all summer. It just doesn't bloom once.
Wow.
It just goes all summer. And then another one is the Ideal series, which is I use in borders for more traditional gardens, European gardens. And then you get all the doubly ones that... going back to my Von Trapp days, when we had these beautiful alpine European, lodges and chalets out in New England, there was some influence there from Europe. The window boxes had these trailing carnations. They're very hard to get a hold of, but they were the doubles, like you put on your lapel, but they would trail 2 feet more down over the window box.
Oh, that's cool.
And absolutely stunning. And they're hard to get hold of, but they act kind of like an ivy geranium.
But unlike the deltoide, something that has a little more of a thicker,
more meat.
a thicker stem and more.
It's going to get bushier, almost
Yeah.
like an ivy geranium.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
In fact, they're used in conjunction with them. So I find Dianthus hot, dry, sunny spots. They're really a good, and there's just lots of options there. Beard tongue. Now, we're not talking about something you eat.
That sounds like a Lord of the Rings character.
Yes.
Gandalf, where's Beard Tongue?
Where's Beard tongue?
I haven't seen him, Gimli.
This is the Penstemon family. And the Penstemon family has a wide variety, from a more natural native variety of green leaves and wonderful coral pink flowers to purple, to a real dark burgundy. In fact, about the color of your lunchbox over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
The leaves are that color, leathery, and then they send up these huge stalks, these kind of bell tubular flowers, almost like a real tiny foxglove looking. And a couple varieties, Red Husker and Dark Towers. There's another one you
See,
could take
there's
off on.
little Lord of the Ring thing going on, right?
Somebody was watching that movie when they decided to.
Probably, right. Tolkien fan of some.
But in my when I talk a little bit later here about our estate gardening kind of stuff that I've been doing, the penstemons, the beard tongues, were unbelievable. They were close to 3 feet tall. I've never
Wow.
seen them so huge. Lupins. Up in the North Shore, you see them grow natively. There, if you're lucky enough, you have some spots around town that you find in your garden and landscape where they will come back and produce for several years.
Do they grow down in this this
Yes,
zone?
they do.
Okay? Okay,
Here's
yeah.
the thing that people do that lupins don't like. Okay, first of all, they need excellent drainage. They need good sun exposure.
That's why you always see them on slopes.
Yes, you don't,
because it's always
you-
draining
If
down.
you want to kill
draining
them,
that water.
plant them in a low area
or
and
flat
a heavy
area.
soil.
Yeah, okay.
And yes, you can count on it within a week.
But lots of sun because
Lots
I
of
see
sun,
them a lot.
good drainage.
On those sides of the road. You know,
Yep.
that sort of thing.
And then what you don't do is deadhead them.
Okay.
And you know why you don't deadhead them? Because they don't like it. Can you imagine going all along the North Shore and deadheading all those
my
lupins?
God, that'd be
All right,
a
that's why
travesty.
that's why they grow so well.
Be a
So
travesty.
yeah, leave them alone. Let
right.
those pods swell up and feed the plant and do all that. So leave those alone. Alliums. We're just finishing up the great big. Right now, actually, in a lot of our landscapes, we have the Allium giganticum that's still putting on a great show right now. And we have early, middle, and late varieties, and those are just been excellent performers. Then they kind of skeleton down to a green ball.
Yeah.
And the color goes away. And I like that for structure in the garden, so I'll leave that and then let, as they go brown, yank them out.
Sure.
But those are...
But you get a sort of
Yeah.
a double action
Yeah.
out of it. You get
Yeah.
the bloom, and
Yeah.
then you get a little green ball, and then
Right.
you got a couple
And if you
of
got a
things going
sunny
on.
spot and you're used to seeing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 deer in your yard every day, just plant lots
Yep,
of
we talked
allium
about that
and
before.
laugh. Just laugh. Every morning you're looking out your window and
We
you just go,
don't-
nah, 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 nah,
we
you
don't
can't
like-
eat my plants.
We don't like onions, the deer say. We don't like the onions.
So, you ever met a deer with bad breath?
No. Well, hello.
There you go.
Hello.
Okay,
It's a personal
Veronica.
question.
Yeah, Veronica. Veronica's another good one that's doing really well right now, just opening up, and there's many, many cultivars that to look at that you won't be disappointed in. The purples and the blues, and loosestrife, Lismachia. In woodland settings or areas where there's more shade, I like using those because they light up their variegated leaves, and then a bonus is a nice yellow flower. And they're in bloom right now. They're doing really well. They will form kind of a carpet mat
Yep.
as they expand in good conditions.
I've seen those used along woodland type or
Yes.
shady area pathways.
Yes. And then there's
because-
another one called gooseneck loosestrife. And that's Lismachia clethroides for all you people like technical terms. It needs an environment where it can spread, but on a slope with a little bit of sun as an underplanting in a woodland area or whatever.
Okay.
That the heads come up, they're white, and then they nod just like a swan.
Oh, that's lovely.
And they do a very nice job, but you want to put them in a good area. Foxgloves, all opening up right now, both the perennial varieties, which is the Lutea, and then the more biennial varieties, strawberry, and there's the many, many other series. Delphiniums starting to spike really well. Lamb's ear. Now, a lot of people think of lamb's ear or stackies as a plant that has those great big silvery leaves, and they're wonderful.
Do love them.
They
That's
do love
one
them,
of my
but
favorites.
right now they're actually blooming.
Okay.
And some people look at them and the bloom is not that impressive. Gosh, the garden center must be busy
It's
today.
really going.
And but those are doing extremely well. I think that the structure and art form almost fabulous. They get just a big stalk. It's silvery white, and then just tiny little light lavender flower petals that come off the top of the stalks. And then there's a green version that a lot of people don't know about that I really like. And again, we're talking about plants that rabbits and deer don't bother. So, and then the whole lily thing. And lilies now are going to they're coming into their big celebration month. You know, between now and the middle of July, we're just going to have lilies after lilies after lilies. And then we even have more in August with the real late blooming orientals.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Orienta pets, which are hybrids of different types of early and late blooming lilies. So the Asiatics are the ones that are starting to pop now, and we'll get, depending on varieties, all the way through the 4th of July. I have so many favorites as we get closer to
I've
the 4th
got a
of
whole
July.
bunch in my yard too.
Yeah,
Yep,
and they're going to be
coming up now.
exploding just like fireworks.
But like you said, and like we were talking about earlier, the ritual, the timelines, the different. I love the different kind of leaves that you get on the Oriental ones, then because it has a whole different leaf structure, and then the explosion of color on those coming yet to be seen. You know, those are on the way. So
Roses are doing phenomenal now. Now we've noticed a couple trouble spots dealing with roses this year, and there's been some leaf issues with things feeding on the leaves or some sort of a systemic thing going on.
Okay.
Not sure. All I know is that people have different approaches for how to treat it, and you got to use from insecticidal soap for the insecticide to something that's more systemic that you put in, and a fungicide type of thing, because we are under pretty good wet conditions now, which we really weren't expecting to see.
Right.
The good supply of moisture. So we're off the drought monitor right now, according to Paul Douglas. That we can kind of breathe a sigh of relief for now, but that can change in a couple of weeks. You just never know. But our subsoil moisture is great right now. And then we had a little attrition with some of the buds kind of just dampening off, if
Okay.
you will, and kind of not opening. And I'm not sure what that's all about, but all I know is that hygiene is always important. I just get rid of things that look sick and get them off the site. Don't let it fall to the soil.
because it's
Cut
going to
them back.
spread that sick.
And
yeah.
of course, roses are heavy feeders, and if they're fed well, then their resistance is up. The good air circulation, good sun, and good nutrition.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but they're phenomenal right now. My Climbing Rambler Red was in bloom at the same time as my wisteria.
Oh wow.
So I had these wisteria
Drooping
drooping between the red roses. I got a wonderful shot of it. It's just absolutely stunning. It was in full bloom for my son's graduation.
Oh,
party.
perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. You lucked out on that one. That's a good one.
But that's what I have for what's going on right now in the garden.
A lot of good blooming. A lot of good
And,
ideas there too.
Yeah. So we can talk about some of the things that are based on experience when it comes to garden and landscape. And
You piqued my interest a couple of times over here.
Okay.
Mostly with that mock orange. I want to seek out some mock orange action there, especially those new cultivars that you mentioned. And then that iris and sada. I want to take a peek at that because I've got a couple of areas around the pond. I
and
think
when
that
you
would be
finally
good.
invite me over to look at it,
Yeah.
I will be looking for those with vigilance to
Yes,
make
you
sure that
will.
they're there. And if I'll bring them over if you need them, I know where to get those.
I got
my sources.
I got a guy. And then, geez, you got me thinking about the lupins because every time up on the North Shore, it's just one of my favorites. And I know I've got a couple of slopey areas.
I was gonna say, yeah.
well drained. It's
Good
not
sun?
good sun, and especially because it's up on the fence line, so it gets over the sun gets over the
Okay.
ridge of my house. So it's a super sunny area up there, and I know I could work some lupins in up there.
Especially the first half day sun probably would be something they'd really enjoy.
Yeah, sounds good. This estate project that you're working on in
In
Winona, this is just amazing. This is a major league project for you. One thing you've impressed me with in showing the few pictures that you have on your phone here, and I know you've got more, and people can catch up with those on your website and in
Yes.
other places. But what I really like, and it reminds me of the classic estates, there's a fair amount of turf area because you got to have room to mill around and have parties and play some games out there. So it's that areas of turf surrounded by all these beautiful planting areas. And then you move on and there's another tableau like that or another room
Yes.
in the estate. And then you go again and then there's another one like that. So they're perhaps interconnected by paths or trails, but what I'm seeing here is going from room to room to room. Am I right in that estimation with, sort of the
Absolutely.
floor space being the green turf and then the beautiful walls literally covered with art. And
Right.
the art being all those plants.
Well, you figure, okay, when you go through an art gallery, let's just take an example like that, and the Art Institute or wherever, a lot of people just don't even necessarily make note of it, but they're participating in it without really knowing why, and it's the whole spatial relationship thing. So we're dealing with things that are very expressive, whether it's living art or aesthetic.
Art on the walls, yeah.
Art on the walls. And so you have mass and void. And in creating these spaces in these outdoor rooms, indoor rooms, in case of an art gallery, is you'll notice that the more that's going on in the periphery, then we have to compensate for the complexity and the more activity by what we do to provide what I call visual relief. Because the visual relief, the areas of void, provide the contrast and the front drop instead of the back drop for the display of these things.
Otherwise, you'd miss most of what you see. Because
Well, you'd be overwhelmed.
Yeah, there you
it
go.
Would be,
Sure.
it would be too much movement. The eyes would never have a place to rest. And it brings a sense of order and a sense of balance. And so you can enjoy it more without being irritated. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it could be so much going on. It's like, this is just too much. It's too busy for me. It's too busy. It's too. You hear that a lot. Oh, this is just too busy. Well, why? What is the problem? So you analyze, what is it? And a lot of times, so we're correcting things that are already in existence, and it's just simple. Sometimes it's subtracting from the landscape instead of just add, in order to get that sense of calm, balance. And in this particular estate setting, I mean, we're talking over 50 acres.
Wow.
Of which, I don't know, 4 or 5 are landscaped to some degree, from a very natural setting down into a very formal setting. And the response of the folks that went with me yesterday to help continue to make this dream just unfold was like, I feel transported to Europe. It was this sense of, wow, this is unbelievable. I don't even feel like I'm in Minnesota right now.
Isn't that sweet?
And it is. I mean, it was so emotive. I felt like I was jumping out of my skin when I saw it, because I hadn't been there for 3 weeks. And the client's comment to me was, I am so amazed that there's a constant evolution of color and interest. She said, there's never been a downtime since the garden opened in the spring. She said, it's a masterful expression of really understanding design. And this person has very high standards.
Well, and let me add, what an incredible and huge compliment to you and to your staff. I mean,
yes.
You as a landscape designer and one who then helps to maintain these things, you couldn't have asked for a greater thing to be said. You just must have been filled with joy.
I was full. I was. I mean, and for someone who, I don't even own it, but I have this professional ownership of it.
Yeah.
And to
Of course
see,
you do.
of course, the most gratification comes from how does it meet the needs and the expectations of the people we work with. And when you get that, you just go, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
this
we did it. We hit it.
We did it. And it's like, and the thing is there's so much more to come. So there was that initial, and I'm thinking about the 50-some people who are going to show up there on Friday for the first time, some of them, and they're just going to go, this is breathtaking.
Is this a staging and a bunch of work done, obviously, to keep it maintained on a regular basis? But there's a big party going on then, and that's what you're cranking up for that as much as anything.
This will become much more known and published in the next several months.
Oh,
It's
very
something
cool.
that we're photographing, and we may even do a video cast down there.
Nice.
So anyway, because it's a learning experience, because every kind of environment exists in this landscape. So we have the full sun, very formal settings to the very natural settings, to full shade, to the issues of all the deer and rabbit and all the wildlife interaction, and then the vistas. There's so many areas where there's vistas, there's views of the natural, beautiful river valley and bluffs of Winona and the Mississippi River Valley, to things that are just right outside the back door, that are the kitchen garden kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's a courtyard entrance and wall gardens kind of things. They can come up the walls, and it's just it is a transportive experience. And their courtyard has this beautiful water feature. It's been there since the 1920s.
More of a formal setting.
Yeah, very, because you kind of pull into the courtyard in a vehicle, and it's all brick walls and some planting beds in the four corners of the square courtyard, and then there's a wall fountain that spills down into the pond, and it's full of koi, and those kois are overwintered every year. I mean, some of them were 15 inches long. I kid you not, and
big fat guys,
huge fat guys, and colorful.
Sure.
I mean, working with the color of the koi and taking that into account in the landscape, how we repeat some of the colors. So it's just a very, very exciting thing.
What do they do? Drop the temp on? Do they have a heater that keeps the temp at about 45 in that then during the winter for the overwintering?
No,
what's going on? Or are they bringing them into a different separate pond?
The original swimming pool is still there and under restoration all the time and still functioning. Actually has a compartment down underneath the pool. You can actually go down. There's a building, you go underneath the pool, and there's portholes in the side, like you would have a ship, where you can actually look into the swimming pool and see the water.
Oh gosh, cool.
Yeah, very cool. But down in there's a tank that's kept at 45, and that's where they kept all winter.
So gotcha.
There's a temperature controlled situation because it's partially underground, so it's easy to control.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So that ties in too with when we talk about rituals and ritual gardening, and it's a palette of expression that in the process it's just as important as what we enjoy in the end. And I think about that in terms of my own experience. A very humble setting here in Linden Hills. My oldest son graduated, and we had a gathering for him, and he has special needs, and so it was a very special gathering, and I had to have our place looking like I know what I'm doing for a living, you know.
Kind of so.
And I usually don't get that done until like this weekend's Father's Day. That's my Father's Day present every year. Is that okay? I'm just going to hang here and do what I want to do, and then take the family out or whatever.
Yeah.
And so this was 2 weeks earlier than that deadline. So the push to get all this done, and then it was just amazing. I go, okay, this is what a client must experience, because when it's all done, then they move from the construction phase, if you will, and the planting and all that activity phase of getting it done, to the enjoyment phase. And the enjoyment phase is so cool. People know out there listening that it's ritual. It's the morning walk through the garden. It's the deadheading. It's the what's coming in next. It's the celebrating and enjoying the fact and being gratified by the fact that it's done, and now it's rewarding.
And then you want to share too. You want to bring friends over.
So now we're going to entertain, and we're going to have those celebrations and the birthdays and all that kind of thing, and it just makes people happy. So it's a really, really important process that happens every year in itself, because it happens every year. It's ritual.
It's another ritual. Yeah.
And instead of a have to and laborious, and we create the experience that we have clientele across the entire spectrum that have different levels of entry into the experience, into the process.
And so in turn, different levels of ritual.
And we invite them in, because you know what? It's theirs. Our job is to interpret what they see, what they visualize, and what they expect, how they will interact with this landscape and this garden experience. And so getting really in tune with how those different levels of engagement occur is really, really important. And I have one of my oldest standing clients. They're not old as a person. They're just it's just the ritual that has created over 27 plus years over in St. Paul in the Crocus Hill area, and very, very lovely, historic area.
And great people. And you've nurtured a relationship.
Exactly.
It's become more personal as well as professional.
Yes. And you start to finish each other's sentences when it comes to the gardening thing. And it's such a great level to get on. And yet it's respectful. It's, as she said, the boundaries are comfortable. The boundaries are where they need to be. And we know in the professional world, and particularly what we do where we're interacting with people and it's a relational business, we have to be aware of what is the appropriate boundary. Some people, it's way to one direction of the spectrum, and others it's like, my place is your place, because it brings the level of satisfaction and gratification that that they're expecting. And so in this situation, we started out, we have a very, there's very few areas to garden, but they're really succinct in terms of their function and how they garden in their compartments and rooms and things like that. Well, this individual, this has been a ritual where she decides, really, we need to do this together. There's over 50 containers, and then there's the beds, and then there's artwork and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, how do we? And so my staff comes and helps to prepare with all the materials that we need on site and that kind of thing. And then we meet. It takes about 2 full days. We meet, and then we go through it. This goes here. No, this goes over. Yeah. It's living art, and they're very familiar with all kinds of art.
She loves being a part of the process. That's the ritual for her.
And I don't know how many times she said thank you in the last couple of days. It's like, I'm so grateful that we can still do this.
That would kill her if somebody just came in and did it. This is not the ritual she wants, and not the ritual that she's willing to pay for.
No.
Actually,
and she's busy and involved and all the kinds of things going on in her life.
But she makes the time for this,
right? And it brings her a sense of peace and grounding. And it's like, and it has memory associated with it because the person cared about every decision.
Yeah.
And that becomes very personal without being too personal in terms of boundaries and that kind of thing. It's really celebrating the best of art and horticulture together. And that is just like, that will carry her now for the rest of the season. And
these are her brush strokes. She got to contribute to this canvas and help to make decisions, and then have her decisions affirmed by a staff and a crew that gets her, not just gets it, but gets her.
Right,
and that's a really cool.
So those
thing.
rituals are centered around. We think about rituals centered around events mostly, but we also need to think about the rituals that are centered around how the client interacts, the timing. It doesn't have to be an entertainment thing, but it could be a timing thing. It's like, oh yeah, right around the time that the herons are nesting or whatever it is, that's when we are doing X, and that's when these things are blooming. That they'll be out to do this, and so we get those kinds of things going, and it plays a very vital part of my priorities in terms of meeting and planning to have those things happen. So we're coming down on, people think, I have to have everything in by the Memorial Day weekend. It's like, well, last year I know that was probably unrealistic.
You couldn't do it.
Well, no, unless you wanted to die.
Right.
And so you do what feels right about, if I want to keep planting all through June, I'm going to do it. I plant cycles. I'll give one example.
I plant all season long because that's what I like to do.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it's a result of thinking about planning. How is this going to be in a month from now, or 2 months, or what's it going to look like in October? So we anticipate. Even though we might be doing some of the work now, we want to know what to expect come Labor Day weekend or October, fall color, whatever it is.
I've got a few places I'm putting some tomatoes in the ground. But the point is, I haven't had a chance to do it yet. It doesn't bother me. I'm just going to buy some a little bit bigger guys at the garden store rather than the smaller ones. I'll just spend a little more money, get the bigger ones.
So they're cheaper now, too.
And they're cheaper. But, the soil temp's up. I'm going to keep them well fertilized and watered, and then they're just going to go just as big as... But I got a chance to put some tomatoes in and get that nice tomato stem smell on my fingers and all of the memories that it evokes. That's going to happen for me just in the next few days ahead.
So back to ritual, we did a project for this one client out on the lake that we basically designed an edible part of her landscape. When she walks out her front door, there is these parterres, these kind of squares, and in the center of those, there's fruit trees. So they're cherries or pears, whatever they are. And then for ground covers underneath, we use different sizes of blueberries.
Oh, great.
We added alpine strawberries and then other types of, we throw a little color in for ground cover and that kind of thing, but basically edible. And then another area that is literally completely covered in strawberries, 3 different varieties. So we have the early the late and the everbearing.
Perfect.
And this is the first time, because it's the first year where they're really coming into their own. It says third year. First year, sleep. Second year, creep.
Yep.
Third year, leap. So when we get into that second, third year, these particularly like strawberries, because they can go crazy. The amount of red fruit that we could see. I mean, even with all the critters, they couldn't eat all of them, And so she does some protective measures. And then we had some currants growing that she'll be able to harvest, and raspberries and the cherries. And it just brings tremendous, this is part of, she writes, she's also a writer. So all this experience in the gardening is incorporated into her literary reflections and so forth. So
that's great.
This, and being a part of that ritual is so important to understand. Say, I'm not just putting plants in the ground and making it look pretty. I'm creating a part of a legacy, and that carries on not just from one season to the next, but it could carry on for years.
Oh, absolutely.
And decades.
And all those, and it's creating a legacy of desserts and different tarts that are going to be a part of it.
Ritual.
The jams, more rituals, layers of ritual on top
They
of
become
ritual.
gifts.
Right.
They become gifts.
Yep. Look what I brought you. I brought you a little basket of these
And that
strawberries.
means a ton.
Where from? My garden. Here, enjoy.
Well, yeah, we were going to talk a little bit about some of the things we can do sustainability-wise in our own. So you have people that are beekeepers now. You have people that are raising chickens, and these are all kinds of things that it's the meaning behind something that goes with a gift. I call it a living gift because it came from a whole cycle of a living process. And when you give that to somebody, someone gives you a fresh jar of jam or something, you're just like, okay, this is.
You can taste you can taste the cycle.
Yes.
You can taste all of the sunshine.
You can taste July.
And you can taste all of the love that went into it. It really has some special bearing. It really has some special meaning. And it's not an ephemeral thing. It's a real thing. You can actually taste that.
And as we get back to some of that, because there's so much going on in our world, our culture, our busy lives, it's hard to reinsert that. It may take a long time. It can be challenging to how you do. Obviously, we play a role in the professional world at Edelweiss because we can help that happen and enter in where it's appropriate, and then let them have the benefit of enjoying the ritual part.
Yep, indeed. You need more information about what Bob does? Oh, we've got a pathway for you. It's this easy. info@edelweissdesign.com. You can also send any questions to Bob or myself, btvoice@gmail.com, BEE. I like the B's. TEA voice@gmail.com. Before we're done here today, I'm so glad you brought up the sustainability part, not only from the aspect of the critters, the chickens and the bees and different things that you can do in that regard. And in urban settings now, obviously check with your city first before you decide to make any move in that direction. Yes. But, Edelweiss Design can help you create that sort of environment. If you wanted to have a chicken coop in an urban backyard, you can also create that in a way that'll be beautifully landscaped, and that will integrate into the way that you're going to use the rest of that space. And so make sure you take that into account, because there are ways to do this and gain the benefits of those eggs or a patch of strawberries in the case of the client that you just brought up, or whatever it is. All of these things can integrate into the way you use your space, where you'll still get all of that sort of outdoor living space use, and at the same time fulfill this part of your heart and fulfill this part of your summer energy, whether it's the critters, the strawberries, the blueberries, or what have you. So great design is what makes all that stuff happen. On a sustainability level, part 2, I also wanted to talk about something that we've brought up over the last couple of shows, and I'm thinking sustainability in this regard. Plants and plant areas that are low maintenance, and now we're not so much in a drought area or drought time frame now, as you mentioned with Paul Douglas saying the soil's doing okay right now. It could change quickly, but I'm thinking about our California friends again, and those that live in Las Vegas, and they already know from xeriscaping there, drought tolerant plants, but also less turf, just so that there's this less futzing that you have to do. I just wanted to kind of ping that up and open it up as a forum with you. Those sort of ways of thinking too.
Let's just start just with regards to lawns. Let's just start with, and I'm not a lawn expert by any means, but from experience, like I said, I mentioned this before in one of our podcasts, if there are areas where you can just let the clover stay with the grass, that would be really great, because the bees The
Love it,
pollinating
right?
bees
Love
love
it.
that.
And the bunnies, and it gives them
exactly.
something to go to instead
right,
of your
instead
other
of your
plants.
zinnias or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
you know. So that's really important. And then looking at tree, shrub, perennial, those three categories, the plants that are native are really suited for our area. And how you can make those the anchors in your landscape. So if you want to futz outside and do some things that aren't native, I mean, okay, let's give an example. Can you imagine, because hostas are not native to
Correct.
to Minnesota.
Correct.
Okay, we don't. I would never expect anyone just because it's not native not to use it. It doesn't have any. It's benign. It really doesn't have any effects in a negative way in terms of our landscape. It has extreme durability. I've had them survive on top of the driveway over a winter and come back
Yep.
spring.
Yep.
They're not even planted.
Yep.
So
They are
you know,
durable.
right? And so, working with some of those things that are tried and true as your anchors,
Those
it'll
native,
lower your
those native ones.
they'll,
Yeah.
they'll lower your level of frustration.
Yeah.
And then you can spend your time doing more things. I love working with a lot of ground covers that work. For instance, in woodland settings, the native ginger has a wonderful ground cover capacity. So if you don't want to do a lot of weeding, you know, using things like ginger.
You know,
at the
I'm on my
medium-
wild geranium jag
the-
lately,
the
so that sort of
geranium,
thing.
Yep. Those are things that are going to lower your maintenance
Mm-hmm.
situation. So that ground cover category is one that I think is overlooked a lot.
Yeah.
Some people like to see just mulch, you know, and a lot of space between things. But there's a real maintenance issue with that, particularly with the weeds. And then when you have the
Yeah, of
weeds, you
course.
start using the chemicals because you don't
Start
have
another
time to go
cycle
and
there.
pluck them one at a time and that kind of thing. So preventative is better than cure, where at all possible you can do that. And in terms of winter damage, when we think about things with winter damage, perfect case in point, when we look at evergreen trees, I tend to like the native Norway spruces and the white pines. They seem to survive our fluctuations a lot better. Our
Can
native
handle the extreme
cedars.
colds and
Yes.
can handle the extreme hot too. Mm-hmm.
There's just, again, when you're planning for anchors, things that you don't want to have to change over time, dealing with disease and storm damage and things like that.
Go native. Go native. Does
So-
that mean we'll be running around in loincloths too? It sounds good to me.
with our javelins and
With our javelins, yeah. It sounds good to me. A comfortable loincloth, I say. Bob, good to see you, my friend.
great seeing you.
We're going to do
Once
it again next week, yeah?
Yes, we will be spending time talking more about that outdoor experience in our patio kitchen,
Absolutely, yeah.
food prep experience.
You know, fabrics are so much better now. So just the furniture you can
Oh.
put out there and everything you can enjoy. We'll talk a little more about those blended gardens. So you can, as you mentioned with your client, where you're mixing in those edibles with some ground covers, and it's just lovely. You know, you can make that all happen. And we're also going to dig into next week's show a little more about the quality of product that people are using, or the quality of landscaping that people are putting in. Things that are just really durable and real and genuine, and seem to be more integrated, Frank Lloyd Wright style, if you will, if you follow my way of thinking, as though it's a part of what already was there, the nature that was there, and how that really. The use of natural materials and durable materials really not only gives you a landscape that's more fun to enjoy and be a part of, but add some property value to your home as well, while you've got a living space outside. So those topics and more when we do the Landscape and Garden Show next week. My name is Brian Turner.
Bob Harvey, Edelweiss Design.
We will see you then.